For the first like 60 or 70 or so episodes that I did of this podcast, I made album art for every episode in which I just photoshopped my face and the face of my guest into a famous painting. There were lots of Rembrandts. Noam Chomsky requested a Rembrandt, but one Rembrandt in particular that you write about is the anatomy lesson, and I used that that painting for an episode with David Albert, I think, on like the philosophy of time. But what was philosophically salient about this particular painting for you? And I guess I also just wonder if it at all applies to this notion of strange tools, like what it teaches us about ourselves, how we use it as a strange tool.
Yeah, good. Let me just preface my reply to you by saying that these ideas, like this analysis of art in terms of strange tools, it can operate at different levels.
Okay.
And one of the things I'm thinking about often is sort of art in relation to the person who's confronted by art. You know, you're wandering through a gallery and all of a sudden you see this thing. What do you make of it? How do you even start to make anything of it? And so there's a kind of, I want to say that there's almost a kind of an existential opportunity there for you to do something. The work of art itself doesn't do anything. You have to figure out how to turn it on. You can't find the on button. You don't even know where to start. Where do I put my money in to like make it start doing something for me? I have to figure that out myself. But that said, a lot of art, in a way, is operating not just kind of along one dimension, art, viewer. It's also in dialogue with other art. And it's referring, so a painting, for example, by Rembrandt is making a move in a space of painters against the context of lots of other painting and the whole history of painting and his sense of, you know, what the art world, such as he knows it, requires of him. So there's just lots of different ways in which the art can be doing its work and lots of places it can find its work. So the thing that blew me away about that particular painting is it seemed to be a kind of direct intervention into epistemology. The first thing is it's a display. For those of you who don't know it, it's an actual anatomy lesson of an actual Dutch physician. And it's a portrait of the doctor lecturing over a cadaver to his students. And he's holding, actually I don't have the image in front of me, but he's holding with one hand, or he's gesturing to the hand of the cadaver with one hand, indicating the way in which the tendons and musculature are displayed and showing with his own hand how it works. So it's a kind of it's an exploration of the anatomy and physiology of the arm. What's very interesting is that what captured my attention was, where are the students looking? Are they actually looking at what he's gesturing at? And some of them are, but a number of them are looking past his hand, past the cadaver. And if you follow the gaze to see what they're looking at is a book which is opened up. They're using a drawing, or they're using text. They're using what was like the, PowerPoint of the day to illuminate whatever the ideas are that he's describing. So it's almost as if the artist is inviting us to look at the way in which our own experience of complex reality is transmitted or opened up or made available to us through using graphical means, which is, of course, what the picture itself is doing. It's giving us this elaborate graphical construction and letting us deal with its opacities as best as we can by trying to find ways to see into it. There's a very interesting question about which there's disagreement, I believe, in the art historical record about whether Rembrandt's own rendering of the anatomy is accurate. And I actually honestly don't remember how history sides on that, or how there's a number of physicians that have written pieces about it. But what's interesting to me is that it isn't self-evident that even somebody with as well-trained an eye as Rembrandt could know by seeing what he is seeing. Seeing requires more than just sensory stimulation. It requires a kind of understanding that you bring to the task at hand. Anyway, so without trying to be dogmatic and suggest that this painting is actually making one specific sort of argument over another, I think it's exploring these ideas and doing other things as well. There's references to the patrons, and some of the students are looking at the audience, in some ways honoring the audience. There's probably lots of other stories you could tell about the picture, but that was the one that captured my attention.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at it right now, everybody's gaze is really going in a different direction. And it just makes me think that there was clearly some purpose behind this, because Rembrandt didn't, I mean, things don't really happen by accident when you're a master painter like this.
That's right. It's staged. That's a really interesting point too. Every work of art, whether it's a painting or whether it's a theatrical production, is the result of indefinitely many decisions that are being made, either consciously or unconsciously. And one of the things that we're confronted with when we're confronted with an artwork is, what should I pay attention to? What in this work is worth noticing? And something that fascinates me, and this fascinates me as a philosopher of perception as well as a philosopher of art, is how difficult it is to pay attention. How difficult it is to know what to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
And so one way you could think about an artwork, and this is an idea actually that's been explored by others, is the artwork is almost a sort of a kind of tutorial in how to see it. The artwork ideally gives you some resources so that you can notice something. And then once you notice something, you're off to the races, because the work starts then displaying more and more once you figure out an angle of approach. I discussed this in so many different pieces of writing, and I could see we're ready for another question. Let me just throw something out to you really quick.
Oh no, you're fine.
I'm amazed by this experience of, choose your artistic modality. I like to think of a gallery, but it can be a concert, it can be a record album, it doesn't really matter. This experience you have of, you enter the room and there's many different paintings on the wall, but they're just kind of indistinct for you. They haven't really popped for you. They haven't announced themselves or fascinated you. They all kind of look, just kind of paintings on the wall, or maybe they even all sort of look the same. That's especially true to the extent that the paintings are unfamiliar to you, the style or whatever. But if you find that on switch, if you ask questions of the paintings, if you put money in the meter, all of a sudden they start to show themselves. These entirely flat objects begin to reveal hidden depths. So what's going on there? Nothing was actually hidden. That's the beautiful thing about a painting. It's a flat surface. Nothing is hidden, which is a phrase that Wittgenstein liked to use. Nothing is hidden, and yet through a certain kind of active looking, things pop out. New material reveals itself. We see more. We make a movement from not seeing to seeing more, or from seeing to seeing differently. And that movement, for me, is the very essence of what we call the aesthetic.
Right now, I'm reading a novel, Them, by Joyce Carol Oates. I don't know if you've read it, but I'm struck by, as I listen to you, how it is also figuratively a flat surface, in that, everything is there apparent for me. But as I'm reading, I still have this same problem that you have, or that I have when looking at the anatomy lesson, which is what I'm supposed to pay attention to. And one other way that maybe we haven't, that hasn't come up, one way the artwork is a strange tool is that when you examine what it is that you naturally end up paying attention to without instruction, it tells you something about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and what your interests are. So I find myself very much in them gravitating toward the passages that deal with masculinity and sexuality, because I guess those are things that are more interesting to me. So I see the novel as something that teaches me about myself in this way, and it's a strange tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I think one of the distinctive features of art, as opposed to mere entertainment, although one and the same thing can be art and entertainment. So these are themselves entangled notions, but is that art, I think, doesn't it? How do I put this? Entertainment meets you where you are and gives you what you want. It's like the massage you paid for. It scratches the itch that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Art disrupts your expectations about what you want. It frustrates you, not necessarily explicitly, like you can listen to a piece of music and not feel frustrated, but if the music is working, it's because it's making choices that are revealing, and they're revealing in part because of how they defy the easier way of solving the problem, or the easier way of making the move. So there are so many books, novels, dealing with, in which masculinity and sex are big themes, but that won't teach you anything about yourself. They'll just titillate you.